So the anthropology of food. So the anthropology of food is actually uh, very broad. Uh, it ties culture with various aspects of food. It's actually so broad, it could range from food taboos, some things that people cannot eat because of religious restrictions, for example, all the way to racial inequalities, access to food in certain areas of town, food deserts. Especially in COVID right now, we have food banks and access to food that's really crucial and it's divided among racial lines as well. So it's very, very broad. It's almost too broad to cover it in the context of this introduction. So fundamentally, we all eat. People eat to survive. You need to eat. I don't know if anyone that survives without eating. But as human beings, we're not exactly only animals. We also eat to signify. For instance, we don't eat anything. We don't eat everything. I have certain things that I don't eat for certain reasons, and I'm sure every single one of you has some things they don't like to eat and some things they love to eat. And our likes and our dislikes in food are not exclusively based on nutrition and health and survival, but also on religion, nationality, morality. If you don't eat meat, health. It's based on innate preference and preference you develop all through your life. So there's a number of reasons why we don't eat everything. And we have very different eating patterns from one person to another, but cross culturally as well. So, food anthropologists use approaches that are based in many other disciplines. So, I touch in my research on many other disciplines than anthropology. For example, food anthropologists look at history, the emergence of national cuisine in the United States, or the emergence of a national cuisine in France, for example, is the topic of many studies in the anthropology of food. Um, Another topic, another approach that food anthropology use is the approach of race, and the importance of race and when looking at food. One of the big topic right now is appropriation, in particular culinary appropriation. When is it okay to take someone's culture and pretend it's your own? So there's a lot of debate. I'm not going to enter this debate in this class, but it's just to show you that there's a lot of different things that can be done. The environment also can be the subject, an approach that anthropologists choose to look at. For example, the issue of sustainable eating, what's sustainable, what's not. There's a lot of debates around it, and anthropologists can help to solve some of those debates. So my own approach, my own research, my own specialization is on taste and authenticity. And you'll get to know what I mean by this. So today, what I propose is to focus on my research and my specialization because the field of anthropology and food is way too broad to focus on everything. So we'll focus today on my research in Japan, which is actually quite broad, but it's pertaining to food and culture. And we'll see what can be done in food and anthropology. So this is a map of Japan. So few outside of Japan know where the region where I did my research, which is called Kochi, with a long O. Uh, and I give you a moment to look at this map. Look carefully at this map and try to find where Kochi is. Where is it? Is it close to Tokyo? Is it in Hokkaido or Okinawa? Let you look at it. See if you can spot it. All right. So Kochi is on the island of Shikoku. So Kochi sits in the southwest periphery of Japan. It's the southern half of the island of Shikoku. So it's isolated by a mountain range in the Pacific Ocean. So a little bit of background information about Kochi. Zoom in, and this is a map of the four prefectures of Shikoku with the prefecture of Kochi in kind of like dark blue. So Kochi, the region where I did my research on anthropology and food, is a poor agricultural region. It also has an aging population and massive rural exodus. So rural exodus is this phenomenon where a lot of the young people leave poor agricultural regions to move to the big cities because there's more opportunities. The universities are there. If you're young, that's where it's happening. No one wants to be young and live in the countryside. Um, but what's important, why I'm giving you all this information, is it doesn't have a whole lot going on for this region of Kochi. But food is an important resource in that region. Food is central to identity and the definition of who those people are. And this is how, as an anthropologist, I find my research focusing on food, because food is everything in this region. So Kochi has a particular food culture, a very distinct regional food culture. This is partially due to its isolation. Remember, I said it was stuck between the sea, the ocean, and a mountain range in the middle of the island. So it's isolated from the rest of Japan and from the neighboring regions. So it developed a very particular, unique food culture. And this is what interests a lot of anthropologists, when you can identify a unique cultural pattern. In my case, a unique food cultural pattern. So on the right side, you have what's called Sawachi cuisine. So Sawachi cuisine is a traditional type of food that's served on traditional ceramic plates that are made in a region. And it's sort of an assortment of different traditional dishes, and you can see it on the left side. And I actually learn how to enjoy it and eat it, but also learn to make it with chefs and cooking schools, etc., etc. The other emblematic dish on the right side is called katsuo no tataki. So katsuo no tataki is seared skipjack tuna. So what they do essentially is they fish the tuna when it's fresh. They cut the fillet it, they cut the meat off, and they sear it really fast, burn it almost on a very quick, powerful straw fire. And then what they do is they take handfuls of salt and just throw salt on it and tap it on the fish. And tataku means to tap in Japanese. So katsuo no tataki. So what's unique about this food culture in the region of Kochi is they use bold flavors like yuzu. I don't know if you've heard about yuzu. It's really trending right now in Japanese restaurants, but all sorts of other restaurants are using yuzu. Yuzu is a type of Japanese citrus which has a very unique fragrance. Um, it uses a lot of ginger. And remember, to provide a little bit of context, Japan as a whole, Japanese food is very mild tasting. They don't use bold flavors. In the region of Kochi, they even use raw garlic. You can see it on this picture actually, right next to the slices of tataki. They have raw garlic. Um, so garlic is not really much used in Japanese cuisine because the flavor are too bold, but raw garlic is unheard of. It's very unique to this region. And this region likes bold flavor. The aesthetics of this cuisine are much more flamboyant and colorful than the typical image that people have of Japanese cuisine. And one thing that's very crucial, and you'll see when I talk about it in a minute, the food, this food is meant to be shared amongst people and with alcohol. So there's a centrality of food, alcohol, and sharing, this like trinity of different things that defines this culture, and it makes it extremely interesting for an anthropologist to study. And this is part of how they build this trinity of food, alcohol, commensality, which is the anthropological term of sharing food around the table, um, is what gives this food culture its perceived authenticity, its realness, if you want. So, what makes food delicious for the residents of Kochi? So, they love many food with bold flavors that are different from the rest of Japan. But also, I want to add that while I was doing research, I realized that not everybody in the region eats the same things. There are even smaller cultural separations from east to west, from mountain, where they like to eat wild boar, and from the sea, where they like to eat a lot of fish. So there's tremendous food diversity, even within this small region that's unique to the rest of Japan. So why do Kochi residents love their food so much? That's the one thing that I keep coming back to. They love it so much. Is this unique to this region, or is it something that's widespread across different regions of the world? So let me have a drink of water quickly. Okay. So my research initially started as an exploration of regional cuisine. As an anthropologist, I want to specialize in the specificities of the region, what makes it special, what makes it authentic. So I came across this dish, this weird looking dish right here that you see. Took a picture of it. This dish is called kashikiri, and it's also called acorn tofu. So when I first tried it, it was terrible. It's the most bitter food I've ever eaten in my life. It's like eating a mouthful of raw coffee beans. So why do they eat this food? I asked myself this question, and I tried to research it and figure it out. Was it because of famine? It's a long history of famine there, and it didn't seem to match up. The consumption patterns and the dates of famines didn't seem to match up. Is it because of tradition? People just love it because it's traditional? Or is it because they like to eat it because of regional identity? So I went to ask the old timers that in the mountains that love to eat this dish. And when I asked them why they ate this dish, they simply answered, because it tastes good. So as an anthropologist, this was quite shocking for me, actually. Something that tastes awful to me tastes delicious to someone else. How does that happen? And I changed my focus to looking at from food to looking at taste, and to look at why social context, social habits shape your perception of taste. So I looked at what's called the social construction of taste, how taste is socially constructed. And this happens outside of the region of Kochi. This happens also for every single one of you that's listening to this recording. The mind and society has constructed preferences for you, and certain things will taste delicious to you and will taste awful to your classmates. And this is something, a phenomenon that's somewhat unique to human beings, where their love and hate of foods